morning, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are gunning for the first start on Bobby's EVO 10. We should be able to get that accomplished today, provided we don't have any crazy setbacks, but I guess we'll see. You never really know with doing full-on car builds like this. Today I think I'm gonna drive the EVO 8. I've been trying to enjoy this thing a little bit more before it snows, so let's go ahead and continue on stacking on some miles. We should be able to get this thing tuned hopefully pretty soon as well. It just has a base map on it right now and it runs perfect. Good old Haltech Elite 2500 putting in work. Much easier to tune a Elite 2500 over a OEM 8 ECU. Also, real quick before we head out to the shop, today's the last day to get entered in on the EVO Turbo Kit giveaway that I'm doing. Very, very nice driven fab turbo kit with a EFR 9174 turbo. I'm including the intercooler, a 4-inch intercooler, all the intercooler piping, 4-inch intake, of course the downpipe, the test pipe, the catback, literally everything you need to make a bunch of power besides like a fuel system. First link down below. Every $3 you spend is one entry to win the turbo kit. All right, my friends, yesterday we got the motor and transmission in the car. We just set it up in here. All the wiring is complete. For the first start, I don't care to have a cooling system. I don't care to have a working power steering system. I don't care to have a working brake system. So what we need to install is an oil cooler, get the fuel system complete. I need to run and grab spark plugs. I need to run and grab gear oil. I need to run and grab engine oil. And then as soon as Bobby gets to the shop, because she really wants to be here for the first start, we can go ahead and fire old girl up. So moving on from the oil cooler system to the fuel system, I'm trying to find a good place to mount our regulator. Now usually I would put the regulator somewhere on the intake manifold, but in my opinion, it always kind of clutters everything up. So I think on this build, I'm gonna go ahead and mount it back here on the firewall. Now here's what I don't like. I don't love the nasty like faded silver look of this regulator, and also that bracket right there. She's quite crusty. So I wanna go ahead and match that bracket that we powder coated and go ahead and apply that same powder coat on the regulator. I'm gonna do that little bracket right there, and I'm gonna do that ECU mount because, as you guys can see, even though I really try to clean that thing up, it's still quite corroded. All of our parts are out of the oven. This color is Blackjack from Prismatic Powders. Very nice OEM looking finish, which I will link down below. Our fuel system is 100% plumbed. Now let's go ahead and install the exhaust. So this is the ETS V3 dual muffler system, I believe it's called. Full catback system. Downpipe is already on the car with the ETS turbo kit. You can see you're right up in there. Full ETS exhaust is now installed. Man, that looks nice. Here's how she looks out the back. Up next is our transfer case. We're gonna put the oil in first, install the drive shaft into the T-case right there, and then very carefully lift that up into the car. So much easier to fill while it's out of the car. Just got the transfer case installed. Let's lower this thing down and start slapping in our fluids. To start, I'm gonna run it with no subframe, no steering rack, no nothing, just in case if you have any sort of little issues, even something as small as a leak, it's so much easier to work on this without the subframe in the way. We have full access to the entire bottom side of the transmission, T-case, and the engine. We're gonna be running the good old Valvoline VR1 2050. This is my go-to oil nowadays. Either the 1030 on a stock motor, stock clearance, or built motor, 2050. All right, so we got it topped off with engine oil. Now we have two things that are a setback. Number one, well, today's Saturday, so number one, I cannot get spark plugs in today. If we do decide to fire it, I'm just gonna pop the plugs out of my EVO 10, which also happens to need a new set of plugs. I know the car will start on that set. And then number two, we cannot get gear oil for the transmission today. It is Saturday, the place I get it from is closed. I only like to run the Redline cocktail in EVO 10s, and they are closed until Monday. Now, when I did assemble our transmission, I used plenty of gear oil while assembling, so it should be fine to run for at least a little bit. Obviously, the input shaft is still spinning, the bearing's still gonna be spinning, but if we're not running it for like more than a minute, I would say, we should be good. Now we sit and we wait for Bobby, because I'm ready. The car's ready to fire. Here's what we're gonna do. Come here. We can only run the car for 1 minute max today.
I hate when you say this stuff. My anxiety spikes.
1 minute max today. We don't have gear oil, nor do we have a cooling system on the car. But what we're gonna do first, let's see how smart you are. What are we doing first? Brand new motor, what do we gotta do?
Well, we need to put oil in it.
It's got oil in it.
Oh,
What's next? You know.
Well, we gotta prime it.
Okay. What does that mean?
With gas. Right?
Okay.
We gotta just flip it over once and let the pump, the gas pump.
We need to build oil pressure.
Yeah.
So we're gonna build oil pressure.
Was I on to anything or no?
I don't know. We're gonna build oil pressure to start, so I'm gonna pull fuel pump fuse and pull the crank sensor so we can crank it, so Bobby can crank it, and then as soon as it builds oil pressure, then we're gonna build fuel pressure, and then I'll plug in the crank sensor, and then Bobby will fire it up for the first time. You excited?
Yeah, a little nervous.
Why?
I always do.
You always do nervous?
Yeah.
We're gonna build
Some pressure?
oil pressure with the plugs out, being that much less compression, zero compression.
Can we just go over slowly, step by step?
Turn on the key.
There's no key.
We gotta find the key.
Ah. Key in the ignition. Now what?
Do you got power?
Yep.
I don't see it. All right. Crank it over. Bobby, it's not gonna start. There's no crank sensor, no spark plugs, no coil packs.
We're just gonna crank it.
It's just gonna crank.
For how long?
Until I say stop.
Why does it not sound normal?
Because there's no spark plugs, there's no compression. We're just free spinning the motor. Dang.
What?
Something with your gauges. Ah, shit.
Is that...
So we're having AEM gauge issues. Imagine that. So I have a trusty Harbor Freight manual oil pressure gauge hooked up to the motor. All right, Bob, crank her. Hit her. There we go. All right, hold her wide for a sec. Let's build some actual pressure. Go ahead. Alrighty, so we have oil pressure. Now we are going to verify that we get fuel pressure. Fuel pump fuses are back in. Bob, go ahead and crank it. Go ahead. All right, we got fuel pressure. Now we need spark plugs. All right, crank her again. It's not gonna start. I just wanna confirm that she sounds healthy. Okay. So it's got plugs in it. I pulled off the serpentine belt so we're not free spinning the power steering pump. There's obviously no fluid going to it. Now we're gonna crank it again. I just wanna listen to it, make sure everything sounds healthy, then I'll plug in the crank sensor and fire it. Yep. Here goes the first start on Bobby's EVO 10. So like I kind of expected, she's not liking it too much without any of the intercooler piping on. I do have the MAF plugged in, so that shouldn't be the problem. But let's go ahead and install the front mount with the piping, the charge piping, and then fire it up again, and we should be good. Fired it up, and then I told Bobby to hit the gas a little bit, and somehow the pedal got stuck down, so that's what you guys just witnessed. First start is out of the way. I'm not gonna run this car any longer until we get gear oil in it, a new set of spark plugs, a proper cooling system on the car. Just get this thing actually fully assembled. There's really no sense in continuing to run it as is. I already verified that all of our work is good. So now we need to complete the build and then we can go drive it. Did you enjoy banging your brand new motor off the limiter?
That was really bad.
What happened?
Did you think that I held my foot?
Yeah.
You thought it was me.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
You want to tell them what happened?
Well, Devin told me to rev it a little bit, and I barely pressed it in, and the pedal just like sucked straight to the bottom and got stuck there.
So how that happened, the steering column isn't connected to the steering rack, of course, because the steering rack is out of the car. So that column, the little shaft, I guess you call it, stuck the throttle pedal to the floor. But everything should be good. It was, for a split second, it was the hairiest thing that I've ever experienced on a brand new motor, especially of this expense and this caliber, but we should be good. Well guys, other than it bouncing 9,000 RPM limiter with 1 second of run time, everything went smooth today. Here's what we need before we actually run the car more and drive it. Of course we need gear oil, proper cooling system, new set of plugs, fix that stupid AEM oil pressure gauge, and then of course just slap in the subframe, connect the axles, bleed out the power steering, and we'll be good to go. So one more day of work, this car should be on the road, and man oh man, it feels good to have this thing back. I love how this engine bay turned out as well. It's so clean, fairly simple, pretty similar to my white 10, but this definitely puts the white 10 to shame on the cleanliness level. I've never tried to clean this bay up really. I've had this motor out a few times, never once resprayed the bay, never did any of that. So it's not all that clean, but it still looks good. I'm gonna wrap it up right here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Little PSA, do not let your brand new motor, bang the limiter right off the bat. Obviously that could have been avoided if that steering column shaft was out of the way, but that's one of those little things you just don't really think to check. But we're good to go. Motor's healthy, motor's fine, oil pressure's fine. Of course, I'll pull the filter and cut it on Monday. Other than that, we should be good. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out, my good friends, and I'll see you guys when we go to drive this car.